Hey everyone, Rick here, and folks, welcome back to the 31-day Battlefields of Mana Battle Report Challenge. Honestly, I can't believe it. It's day 2. It feels like it should be at least day 16 or 17. Not that I'm struggling, but oh my gosh. Anyway, so I was like, how are we going to do this with spoilers and everything? Honestly, it doesn't really matter, right? So as of yesterday, we had a Regal Guard victory in the Forest of Arcadia. Let's quit playing around here, folks. Where are we battling today? It is going to be number 9 and a 2. So number 9, Mistoak Forest, small tier 1. Oh my gosh, so that's the other forest. We went from the large forest to the small forest, and it is a number 2. So the Mistoak Forest is a tier 1, so we'll look at tier 1, and a number 2 is a 10. You know what? That'll be just fine. A 10-point battle in the Mistoak Forest, probably the remnants of the two forces, essentially, going at it in the southern woods. All right, we'll set up terrain first, and we'll be right back. All right, folks, here is terrain placement. I debated on re-rolling because I'm like, do we want to do 2 forest battles back to back? But you know what? Let's just go where the dice takes us. Now, a third, like tomorrow, if it's a forest, I might re-roll it. So let's just go ahead. And I mean, this is kind of narrative, right? We still had both forces had survivors after a large forest battle. So maybe they did head south and clash again. So here we have the Mistoak Forest, maybe with a small clearing in the center. And this will be a 10-point battle, very simple terrain for this one. 10 points. Let's go ahead and draft the forces, and we will be back with the armies and probably also deployment. All right, folks, here is deployment, and probably through all of these battle reports, we'll do Lunar Knights on the left, Regal Guard on the right. And as you can see, I mean, this is a 10-point battle, almost a third of the size of the last one. And there's still a lot of figures here, right? At least on the Regal Guard side of things. But I mean, we still have a sizable force for the Lunar Knights as well. So Lunar Knights of the Obsidian Eclipse, what do they have? What are they going with? Again, 10 points. Starting down here on this side of the table, we have the Warlord on horseback as a single figure, not attached to a unit yet. Right next to them is a unit of Axemen worth 3 points, a unit of Spearmen worth 2 points, the Sorcerer on his own on horseback in the center, Spearmen 3 points, Axemen 2 points. And I believe that's the same 2 types of units they had left at the end of the last game. Not that I'm really trying to drive home a narrative here, but just with 10 points, I mean, you have some pretty decent options, so that's what they went with. Regal Guard really favored manpower over maybe the strongest units. Also, you'll notice there were no ranged units apart from the Sorcerer for the Lunar Knights. I think they were concerned about the forest, you know, getting their troops into the forest quickly if they were ranged and then shooting out of the forest so they wouldn't suffer a penalty for shooting into a forest. But probably a good thing they didn't go for range because they ended up rolling to go second. So the Regal Guard deployed first and will go first. So again, 2 points for a unit of bowmen, 2 points for a unit of swordsmen, 2 points for a unit of mounted militia, 2 points for another unit of mounted militia. In the center there is also their sorcerer on horseback, their warlord on horseback, and then another 2-point unit of archers. So all of these 2-point units, 5 2-point units, give them the 10 points. So they put these mounted militia toward the center. Are they going to use their speed to just charge through the forest? Or is that a diversion? Are they actually going to come swinging out to either flank? We will have to see. Of course, they put their warlord over there by those archers, potentially to give them some melee support, but we'll see. Now let's also take a look at the equipment that each warlord chose. As always, 5 points worth of equipment. For the Lunar Knight warlord. He chose Bodolf's Staff, 2 points, gives the sorcerer an extra d4 mana, so 2d4 instead of 1d4. Axe of Legend for a point gives him Assault in close combat. His 6s will explode. Gauntlets of the Warrior for a point. He's re-rolling all natural attack and defense die results of 1. And Dodge. All his defense dice that fail to negate an attack die get to be re-rolled. And then over on the Regal Guard side of things, kind of interesting, you typically see these two paired up, the Squire and the Amulet of Time. So the Amulet of Time again gives you a second attack action. The Squire has 2d6 attacks of his own, so you can see, and that'll go twice along with the Warlord. So the Warlord's 4 dice, the Squire's 2 dice, and then repeat that again. So in the end, you're rolling like 12 dice. Which is pretty crazy compared to the Lunar Knights 4 dice. And then also an arm cannon, and that can be used twice as well. So he has some ranged options there also. All right, so that is deployment and what the warlords chose. So I'll be right back after round 1, starting with Regal Guard and followed by the Lunar Knights. All right, folks, you are looking at the end of round 1. Each side has completed their first turn, of course, beginning with the Regal Guard, who simply moved everything up. Archers up to about there, because what they wanted was some melee units to get in front, so, if someone tries to flank one of these melee units, they can shoot into the opposing flank. And as possibly suspected, the 2 mounted militia units did break from charging through the forest and are providing support on either side. This is a really interesting situation. First of all, we have the swordsmen, who are kind of the odd men out over on this side. So the swordsmen and the mounted militia were going to support the archers here, whereas the mounted militia and the warlord himself were going to support those archers there. And then the sorcerer moved up toward the forest. Of course, the sorcerer's main offensive ranged spell, Pyrostorm, cover bonuses are negated. So he can stand right there, right outside the forest, and shoot the flames through the forest all he wants. He doesn't care about cover saves. So then on the Lunar Knight side of things, kind of meticulously moving up, they moved up just enough to be out of charge range of these folks. And so, of course, the axemen are slower than the spearmen, so they are kind of lingering behind a bit. The warlord just charged up. He said, ooh, there's a juicy target, those archers. I'm going right for them. He's stacked, of course, with offense and defensive equipment. And single figures don't have flanks, so if one of these 2 units does decide to help out those archers, they're going to go after him, but he doesn't have a flank, so he's still going to be chewing away at those archers. However, similar situation over here. This is the side that I'm most concerned about, because that warlord is just so powerful. I'm afraid he's just going to chew through these units. But we'll see what ends up happening. Likewise, he does not have a flank either. I originally had the spearmen moving way up, but then he could have flanked them. So we're trying to protect our flanks here is kind of the main thing going on at this time. We did channel 5 mana, did the sorcerer, and he popped all that into a Pyrostorm blast that hit this unit of swordsmen, which is why there are some casualties. First blood to the Lunar Knights with a couple of swordsman casualties, as well as the warlord was able to get off his war cry, so the spearmen there have an extra die. This warlord failed to do his war cry. All right, so that is where things stand at the end of round 1, and we'll be back at the end of round 2. All right, folks, this is what we're looking like at the end of round 2. As you can see, a lot of combat starting to brew over here. So over on the Regal Guard side of things, they were able to get some shots off with this unit of archers on those axemen, of course, before the axes had moved into contact. So those archers did a wound on those axes. These archers over here managed to kill an axeman over here. As a matter of fact, these mounted militia had moved into contact with the Lunar Knight Warlord, but of course on the Lunar Knight Warlord's turn, he was able to break away and then get into the flank of those archers, allowing these axes to move up. Those swordsmen moved into contact with the spears, so that was the only close combat this turn, because on the Lunar Knight phase, the spearmen did get to strike. Spearmen had 2 Warcry dice, plus all 9 of their regular dice, 11 dice, and they managed to do a single wound. Thankfully, swordsmen were only able to do a single wound right back. The sorcerer, seeing a prime opportunity over here, launched an attack and hit the Regal Guard's warlord for a wound. Unfortunately, he rolled 7 dice, only was able to do a wound. Those spears tried to reform so that they could face the warlord front on, but they failed to reform, so they're kind of stuck there. So they decided to brace on their turn. And those axes took 2 turns to move into contact with those mounted militia. What did this sorcerer do? He channeled. I think he placed an enchantment on those swordsmen, is what I believe he did. He only channeled, I think, 2 mana. And then those swordsmen used their enchantment, and that's kind of the reason why they were able to do a wound. But all right, so that's the end of turn 2. I will be back at the end of round 3. All right, folks, here is the end of turn 3. Round 3. And as you can see, I mean, it's like neck and neck. Now, so this is the halfway point of the game. Where do we stand? These archers reformed, backed up, and shot, doing no wounds. On his turn, the Lunar Knight Warlord charged in and has basically halved that unit. When the archers broke away, they also took breakaway wounds as well. This is just a cluster. I mean, it's a stalemate. The mounted militia do 2 wounds. Axemen do 2 wounds. Similar story here. These spearmen may have a slight advantage at this point. This sorcerer took a harsh shot, a harsh pyroblast, down to 5 wounds. So he launched his own. So now these sorcerers are just targeting each other. 5 wounds and 6 wounds. And then, thankfully, this warlord's not gaining as much ground as I feared he was going to. Mostly because the spearmen keep bracing themselves on their turn, not giving him an opportunity to attack. So yeah, if he wants to waste all his time on that 2-point unit of spears, have at it. In fact, they were going to reform, but then I realized, no, him attacking them in the flank gives him no offensive advantage, but those archers, they shifted over just enough so now they can shoot the spears, and if the spears reform to face him head on, which they don't care about attacks against him, they figure they wouldn't do anything anyway, just holding him up is enough. But if they gave the archers their flank, the archers would get a +1 to their attack roll. So they figured, no, you know what, let's just give him our flank, brace ourselves, and take the shots. And then over here, it's just a stalemate, just like over here. Isn't that insane? But hopefully things will heat up in a little bit, because those axemen, don't forget, they have fury. So as soon as he takes 1 more wound there, and in fact, as soon as he takes 1 more wound there, those 2 units will become furious, and their attacks are going to be all +1. And then hopefully we'll see those mounted militia bite the dust. But until then, it is neck and neck halfway through this game. All right, I'll see you at the end of round 4. All right, folks, end of round 4. This is what things are looking like. Somehow, even after bracing themselves, this warlord was able to do 5 wounds and eliminate that unit of archers entirely. Over here, the axemen are chipping away at these mounted militia, looking good there. The warlord, I couldn't believe this. The sorcerer. The Regal Guard sorcerer launched just a 2-die attack. And they were just a pair of 3s. And this sorcerer's defense gave him +1. but he rolled a pair of ones, so he took 2 wounds. He's down to 3 health. He ran down here, where he could have either tried to heal himself, cast a shield on himself, or what he went with was an attack. He only did a single wound, and now he is in a bit of peril. He did move because this warlord was seriously considering leaving. After I made that remark about how the warlord was wasting his time on those spears, the 2 points of spears, this sorcerer is worth 5 points. He's down to 3 health. At the time, he was down to 5 health. But even at 5 health, this warlord was like, that's a juicy target. But he opted to remain there, and which may have been a decent idea, because then those spears, at the time, were still pretty healthy, could have either flanked those cavalry or went up to charge the archers. So he decided to stay there, which he has narrowed them down quite a bit as well, with help from those archers. Still a stalemate here for, it seems like, every 2 wounds, so just taking a look at that, it's just kind of stuck where we are. So now it'll be round 5. We're nearing the last third of the battle. We'll be back at the end of round 5. Okay, folks, end of round 5. This is just absolutely insane. Okay, so here's what ended up happening. The sorcerer did take another wound, but what he did what he should have done all along. I'm like, how am I going to protect the sorcerer? Well, he joined a unit. Now he cannot be singled out in ranged combat. Unfortunately, maybe too little too late, he also did not manage to channel very much mana. He only channeled 3. Of course, he could have used 2 of that for an enchantment token to defend himself, but at this point he didn't think it was necessary. Of course, being in close combat, he could be singled out by the mounted militia. Unfortunately, the axes and the sorcerer doing a close combat attack whittled this down to just a figure, but that figure could have still done a wound, thankfully, because he targeted the sorcerer in close combat. Wasn't able to do anything, thank goodness. Spear's able to whittle the swords down to a banner bearer. Lunar Knight Warlord moved into contact with the sorcerer. Sorcerer probably won't stay there long. He'll probably be out of there. The Regal Guard Warlord managed to finally finish off those spearmen. He's going to have to decide what he wants to do next. Let's see, is that within 6? Oh, yeah. So on this turn, he's going to charge those poor axes in the flank, probably wipe them out. The axes finally got a foothold over here and managed to almost take out that damn mounted militia entirely. Those archers, unfortunately, didn't have a target. The warlord, well, let's see. Yeah. So anyway, yeah. So that's what we have left. And it's the last turn. Now, folks, I am going to say this right now. It'll be game over no matter what happens if this sorcerer dies. And how could he die? Well, if he fails an arcane duel so badly that he takes 2 wounds. He has no choice on the Regal Guard's turn. Regal Guard can challenge him to an arcane duel, and he has no choice but to accept. If he takes those 2 wounds, it's rare, but it could happen, then it's absolutely game over at that point. Because this, you'd have to completely destroy the other person's army entirely. And not because those sorcerers are worth 5 victory points apiece. So that's what we're looking like right now, and then we'll be back at the end of the game. All right, my friends, here is the end of round 6. Here is how things are looking. So on the Regal Guard phase, the Regal Guard sorcerer did an arcane duel and did no wounds to the Lunar Knight sorcerer. So with that being the case, the Regal Guard sorcerer headed for the hills, broke away, taking a wound in the process, but ran far out of reach on the last turn. That's all he wanted to do. And let's see what else. We had this unfortunate occurrence happening. So, as predicted, the Regal Guard Warlord on the left there charged into the rear of what was remaining of the Axemen. Unfortunately, the Axemen didn't even get a chance to strike back. They were wiped out by the Warlord, leaving that mounted militia unit still on the board with a wound left on the lone figure remaining. Now, with the Regal Guard Sorcerer out of the way, the Lunar Knight Warlord charged into the flank of these archers, which had repositioned themselves, and they actually took a shot. They took a full 6 shots at the Axeman, but did no wounds. And I thought, oh my gosh, that could be a sign that the Axeman will stick around. But no, they were vanquished. But look at how close, because this was a full unit of archers. And then the Lunar Knight Warlord was able to whittle them down, doing 5 wounds. One more wound, and they would have scored a point for being halved, cut in half. But as is, they are still there. No victory points for the Lunar Knights on that one. Over here, the Sorcerer, who had kind of been a little afraid for a while, jumped out of that unit of Axemen. So what had happened was I was already kind of tallying up the victory points. As is, because you know, this unit has 1 wound left, and then it would be cut in half, and that would be a victory point. This unit had 1 wound left. Cut in half would be a victory point. So I'm like, well, where do the points stand right now? Maybe we just don't fight at all on the Lunar Knight phase, but it would end in a tie. So I still didn't really want them to fight, so what I did, or what the Lunar Knight player did, I should say, was move the Sorcerer out of that unit, channeled mana. He ended up channeling 3, and he had already had 3, and he shot 1 Strength 3 Pyrostorm Blast into this Banner Bearer, and 1 Strength 3 Pyrostorm Blast into that Banner Bearer, and both of them only had a wound left, and both Pyrostorms killed them, and we didn't have to risk these last wounds over here. So here is what remains. It's time to tally it up of the Lunar Knights. The Regal Guard will score no points for either of these units because they were not cut in half. And then, of course, the Sorcerer only has 2 wounds left on him. I keep saying the Lunar Knight Warlord is unharmed, full 10 health. And then over on the Regal Guard side of things, they do have a unit of archers that have not been cut in half, so no points for them. They do have a Banner Bearer of a mounted militia unit left, so they were cut in half or more, so a point was scored for them, but the Lunar Knights don't get the other point. And then the Regal Guard Warlord lost 2 health, he's at 8, and then in the end, the Regal Guard Sorcerer lost 6 health, he's at 4. Cutting the leaders like that health in half or more doesn't score any points. Even if it did, well, we got half on that Sorcerer and half on that Sorcerer, so that's kind of a wash. So what are the scores, you're saying? Rick, just get to the scores. All right, here is what the Regal Guard destroyed. 2 points of spears, 3 points of axes. That's it. 5 points for the Regal Guard. Here is what the Lunar Knights destroyed. 2 points of archers, 2 points of mounted militia, 2 points of spearmen, and unfortunately, only a partial unit of those mounted militia for a point. So 2, 4, 6, 7. That's it, folks. A score of 5 points for the Regal Guard. A score of 7 points for the Lunar Knights. The Lunar Knights got revenge on the Regal Guard in the smaller southern woods of Mistoak Forest. So what does that mean? That means, oh, that's right, it is sticker time. Battle 2 of this campaign goes to the Lunar Knights. Regal Guard had them in the Forest of Arcadia. They headed south, where the Lunar Knights were triumphant in the Mistoak Forest. So, boom, there it is. All right, it is 1-1 in this Battlefields of Mana campaign. We're only 2 battles into a 31 battle campaign. Place your bets now. Whose side are you on? The Lunar Knights of the Obsidian Eclipse or the Regal Guard of the Golden Solstice? Wherever we battle next, it's not going to be in the woods. I promise you that. All right, folks. Thank you all so much for watching. I do truly appreciate it. And until next time.